Do you remember any of the many changes in the YouTube layout that was just completely uncalled for? Do you ever notice that exact same thing happening on pretty much any other website on the internet? Because let me tell you, it does. It does a lot. A lot of things with a lot of websites change a lot of the time. It feels like you can't wake up any day without receiving an email telling you how some feature from some of the websites that you use has now changed. And then when you check out what the actual changes are, it turns out that they haven't really improved your experience at all. They've just sort of altered it. In fact, given that you are probably familiar with the way that things used to work, your experience is actually going to be worse for a while until you've accustomed yourself to the new circumstances. At which point, of course, things change again. But why does this happen? Why does it happen so much more in big tech, where things that are perfectly fine are just change? Isn't familiarity supposed to be good for customer retention or something? Doesn't changing something in a massive and very complicated machine drastically increase the risk of something going terribly wrong somewhere else? Yes, actually, these things are very true, although this is not to say that nothing ever should be changed, of course. Obviously, sometimes you want to expand something by a very important set of features, or actually genuinely introduce an alteration that will massively improve user experience. Sometimes design improvements have been made that you need to also adapt to, and which are actually improvements that make the site more user-friendly. Though, of course, the place where you have to do changes the most is security, because that's an ever-waging war. But unless the change is like really actually important for those reasons, like revolutionary or essential, the reason that they happen is mostly due to one reason, and that one reason is the reason where all of the other reasons spring from. The people whose job it is to change things really want to keep their jobs. Imagine you're the team responsible for doing the YouTube layout, for instance, right? Imagine that you have done a tremendous job. Every aspect of this new layout, it works perfectly. Back-end developers are happy with it because it's very easy to work with. Creators are very happy that it provides a broad set of tools that are easily accessible. They can interact with their community in a way that is meaningful. Anyone that views videos on the site finds it seamless, unobtrusive, but at the same time full of options that always enables them to do exactly what they want to do and keeps them watching more videos. It's just the best timeless design that you could ever come up with. Congratulations, you have just lost your job. I mean, what did you expect was gonna happen? You had the job of making the perfect YouTube layout. You did the job. Now YouTube isn't going to keep you around and pay you for doing nothing. They're gonna cut you because you're just useless overhead at this point. They'll keep one or two members of the team around to run maintenance, of course, but most of the team is done with the job they were hired to do because they did a tremendous job. The work no longer needs to be done. There is no reason to pay someone to do work that doesn't need to be done. So how do you avoid losing your job because you did too good a job? Well, the first thing you do is you don't do as good a job as you could do, which, especially in areas where there is any amount of subjectivity involved, is very, very easy. And once you have created something that you were supposed to create, what you do is you constantly make changes to that thing, claiming that you do this to improve it. Now, is there a reason for making these changes other than to prove to the company that the work you do still matters to the company? Not really, but you'll come up with plenty and you will get away with it because after all, you are the foremost expert on that particular aspect of what the company does. So not only do you design the layout, you are also the one charged with determining whether or not the layout needs to be changed. That's very convenient. So you talk about inefficiencies, about optimizing some minor aspect of the experience to draw away attention from the fact that you are the inefficiency and the overhead that would otherwise be cut. Oh look, we have this data that says that the user's cursor hovers around this particular spot for 0.002% more than any other spot on the website. So we should definitely alter the whole layout of the site so we can put a button there that does something. Let's be charitable here and say that most software developers and business majors are not trained research scientists. Some simple examples of this would be the systemically racist algorithms that, for instance, you have the low resolution picture of Barack Obama, you've seen this, and what comes out is Barry Obama, the Irish guy. Or the one they use in London with the Metropolitan Police that can't tell apart different Asian people. The ones that they use in China to do dystopian hellhole things do not have those problems, and anyone who's taken Statistics 101 at a university class will be able to tell you why. I mean, what did you expect was gonna happen when you trained these babies on 80% pictures of white people? Simply because, not because you're like racist or anything, but because you Google and that's the thing that you have the most available of. It's very practical to do that. This was an obvious thing that any data scientist could have told you would happen if you did this. Yet apparently they didn't notice, and so now, instead of correcting for that shit ahead of time, they're doing it after the fact. So you can see how easy it is that if you look at some minor deviation in the data, show that to your bosses and tell them that it's some kind of thing that you can optimize the whole system for so it is absolutely perfect this time. They won't see that it's just like a standard deviation margin of error thing. They will not see the sampling bias. They're not trained for those things. They don't care. And good on you, frankly. It might sound like I'm judging you, but I'm really not. You are extracting paychecks from a corporation with pockets so deep they make a bag of holding look like a fucking thimble. You have effectively found a way to con the capitalist at their own game, and I applaud you for it. But this of course also means that the changes will never stop, the feature creep will never end, and the perfect design will never be achieved, which, let's be clear, kind of also the perfect design isn't really possible. Perfection is a non-state. It's contradictory. It can't actually exist. Now, I do believe that the people who are doing this, the people who try to avoid becoming redundant, are not doing it cynically. At least most of them aren't. Most of them are probably doing what they're doing because they think that the particular thing that they're doing is actually important to the company, and frankly, also because they're told to. It's not like these companies make it difficult to be overhead, and the reason for that is that it's usually very, very difficult to actually judge what alteration will ultimately be irrelevant and which one will be very important. So you just do both. So given that they can afford it, because they have such unfathomably gigantic amounts of money, it is apparently more economical to remain inefficient rather than to actually do something against that problem actively. Otherwise, that would have happened. Which, coincidentally, the inverse of this whole problem is also kind of why government institutions sometimes do not change, even though maybe they should. Governments have very different goals as to what their institutions are supposed to achieve when compared to like a profit-oriented business. And they don't give a fuck about overhead. They also have an added incentive to retain the loyalty of their employees, which is why in many countries it's actually quite difficult to fire public servants from their jobs. And even if you do manage to dislodge one from their position, they will receive a different job in a different area of public service. Plus, because their services aren't tailored to a specific demographic most of the time, it is very important that they retain a higher degree of familiarity, as say Twitter does. Hence why sometimes they don't change things even though they really fucking should. These kinds of inefficiencies are known and accepted side effects of running a big organization of any kind. There's really no way to avoid them, and where there is, it's usually more costly than to just let them be. If you have this huge, complicated machine, you can't actually optimize it to a degree where it works perfectly, even if it existed in a bubble, which it doesn't. So the constant process of optimizing to achieve ultimately nothing is just the price of doing business. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, just FYI, a lot of people already know this, especially you know, my patrons. But next month, November, is NaNoWriMo, which is why there's only going to be one video every Wednesday for a total of 4 videos, so I can work on doing NaNoWriMo stuff. I'm just gonna spend this week recording all of those. I was going to go with the regular thing, the regular schedule, but there was a lot of stuff that I still had to do to work on my novel, because in NaNoWriMo, you're not allowed to do editing, but I was just almost done with editing the second draft, which I am done with now, by the way, and so I'm sending it out to the proofreaders, well, the beta readers really, and then we're gonna go on from there. So that's why there's only 4 videos in November. I'm sorry about this, but it's you know, I just have more than one job. And see you around, cunts.